So making a air compressor out of an old fridge compressor is fairly simple. There are a couple ways of going at this, so I'm going to start with the more troublesome way and just sourcing out parts. Most of these parts you should be able to get from any hardware store or automotive shop. So the first thing is the parts list. You need an air regulator. Okay, so you can regulate your air. You need a air tank to hold the compressed air. On the bottom here, this is an electrical component. It senses that the tank is full. Usually this one's set at 100 psi and it stops at 100 psi, so it doesn't allow the air to pump in any further. You'll need a safety valve in case that your electrical cutoff doesn't work and it continues to pump air. This just allows the air to release, so then your tank doesn't get over full. Mine is rated at 115 psi. And obviously you would need a compressor from a refrigerator, an air hose, which I got from the hardware store. This one cost me $3. And make sure your air hose can withstand the pressure of 100 psi and up. Mine is rated for 300, so that's more than enough. And what I don't have on my compressor, but which I would highly recommend to get, is a water trap or a moisture filter. It usually goes in line from the hose from the tank to the hose, and this catches any oil, moisture residue from blasting out the other end. And if you decide to go the easier way, which is having an existing compressor, so all you're doing is taking out the old compressor motor and putting in the new one, which is very straightforward, and it's basically what I'm doing here in this video. Now this looks like a normal air compressor, and that's exactly what it is. You can pick this up at any hardware store for about $50 to $100 depending on the store and the brand. My greatest problem with this type of compressor is it is incredibly loud and it doesn't fill up the tank fast enough. So this is how it sounds like. Incredibly loud. And this is a compressor from a refrigerator. Now first of all, safety. You don't want to be releasing the refrigerant into the atmosphere, so it is always a good idea to bring the fridge to a mechanical company or a company that can recover the refrigerant, so you don't ruin the atmosphere. This is really bad for the ozone. Once the refrigerant is out of there, you can just cut the lines. Now leave the lines as long as possible because you don't know how you're going to be routing it. And what I use to connect the new compressor to the air tank is just a piece of hose, and you can get this at any hardware store. I bought mine for about $3 and a couple of band clamps here. So let's take this thing apart and I'll show you how I put everything together. So with my particular compressor here, the top just comes off with a couple of screws. I've already removed the 4 screws. And this exposes the internals. Just going to disconnect the air line. This air line connects to the original compressor. And then a couple screws up here to remove the top. This is the original compressor motor. Nothing too fancy here. And go ahead and remove that, set it out of the way. Now I'm gonna just put this aside. I'm gonna save it just in case I want to revert it back to original. The method that I'm using is non-destructive, so if I really wanted to put this back together to its original form, I can do that. Anyway, continuing, we use the hose, just thread it back on. There are several ways of doing it. Some people would replace the fittings here and actually weld a copper tubing directly to the compressor, but again, just because this is a lot more simpler, I chose to do it this way. Now the advantages of using this type of compressor is it's quiet, and the air output is more or less a little bit better than what came originally on this compressor. Now there are drawbacks to this type of system, and the drawback is this system requires lubrication. Now since this is normally a closed loop, designed for a closed loop system inside the refrigerator, the refrigerant includes oil within itself, so it's self-lubricating. But now that I've cut the line, there's no supply of oil, so once in a while you will have to put some oil into the intake, something like machinist oil or 3-in-1, something like that, just to keep the compressor from seizing up. There are 2 wires that you will need to cut, and I've already done that. It's basically the wires that lead to the original motor. Just snip those off. You will be reattaching this to the power wires leading to the new compressor, but we will do that at a later time. But right now we will have to find a way to mount this compressor on top of this, which shouldn't be too hard, as this is just mild steel. I'll just drill a couple holes and mount that straight up. So the way that I'm mounting the system is pretty simple. The compressor normally comes with rubber mounts originally, so I'm just reusing those. I drilled a couple holes into the base plate here of my old compressor and just sticking them in there. Alright, so the compressor is now mounted securely. It's not going anywhere. So the next step now is to start hooking up the air hose. So what I have here is a $3 pressure hose from any old hardware store with a couple of band clamps on each end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this excess wire off, because I'm just going to feed this around. So all I used was a Dremel rotary tool, and that made easy work of cutting the pipe. So it just came right off. Now don't throw copper piping away, because it is worth a little bit of money. If you collect copper piping, you can bring it to a scrap yard. They'll give you a couple bucks for it. So that's pretty much it for the input side. Just tighten up the band clamp, and that's it. Now we're ready for the next step, which is connecting the electrical. So now onto the electrical. Your fridge compressor should already be pre-wired, or have wiring already that you've cut from the original unit. So we're just going to attach this to the wires that you cut from the old compressor. So just strip the wires and hook them up however you like. So in my case, I'm going to be soldering it. Okay, now it's all soldered together. Now to insulate it with some electrical tape. Alright, now my electrical connections are all complete. I'm just going to plug it in and test it out to see if it's working. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but the compressor is running. And the pressure is rising, which means it is getting air. So normally the pressure cuts off at about, or the compressor cuts off at about 100 psi. So we're going to see if the safety works. So we're just about at 100. Okay, there we go. Well, just under 100. And we have air. So this was a success after all. So from time to time, to keep the compressor maintained, put some machine oil into the intake. Because now this is an open system rather than a closed system, the oil does get used up. It gets deposited into the tank actually. So it is a good idea if you are choosing an air tank that you have a oil or a moisture release like so on the bottom here, so then you can release any oil that gets trapped inside the tank. And I've also, the finishing touch, I put an air filter on the top here so it doesn't suck in any dirt. And this air filter is just a radio controlled car air filter for nitro engines, and you can get this at any hobby shop. So this concludes the video. Hopefully you guys found this helpful and gives you an idea of how to build an air compressor out of an old refrigerator compressor. So go out there, find yourself an old fridge, tear it apart, and start building. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, post them below, or you can email me. And thanks for watching.